Okay, so I want to talk about danger number three, which is a strong either net north or south toe. Um, yeah, so essentially, if you have really big waves and you have a storm coming from here, it's usually nor'easters coming from the south. It's like a river flowing up north, and getting out is generally very dangerous. The only way I've been successful over the years, first of all, if you just try to puddle around, you're just gonna take a ride up north. So obviously being patient, waiting, for the island shape to change, it might give you a little advantage and it can allow you to get out. Standing and waiting, you can't really walk in a phenomenal current. So if you just stand and try to walk out, you're not gonna be able to, and you're just gonna get beat up really bad. And then you're gonna find yourself in a worse situation. So therefore, I think the most logical conclusion is either to wait for the island's shape to change and to get a little extra oomph push out from the current as the island changes, number one, or the other option is just to go for it. you know you're going to be kind of close to shore at that point, and if you give it your all, you have a chance, right? I've been successful with that, and I can tell you it's been very dangerous. So I think the two options, kind of laying on your back and kind of just, trying to wait, assuming you can wait, lay on your back. And the other one is to actually just go for it, right? Because listen, if you're, here, it's a northern toe usually when the storms come from the south. So if I go north, I mean, I'm obviously not going to get out. However, right? If I go for it, going west, eventually I'm going to have a northwest direction to the path I take, which means I should get out eventually. Hopefully, I don't get exhausted before. Relax and listen to the ocean. Don't forget, you can always pick the point you enter, but you're generally not going to be able to pick the point of departure, right? Where you leave is going to be part of the situation of the day, right? The situation of the day. Rip currents. Yeah, rip currents around here, in Hatteras, where the waves are just ginormous, I honestly think is a non-issue. You literally have to try to stay in a rip current. You can see them, little rivers flowing out, but the waves are just so strong. The rip currents, you know. I saw bigger rip currents in Myrtle Beach where you have smaller waves, and the rip currents can actually make it through the stuff. Here, these rip currents really have a hard time getting through it, but at the same time, the biggest risk with a rip current is it pulls you out, away from shore, so you just swim sideways. A friend of mine said he was in Costa Rica and on a surfboard, and he got just pulled out, like sucked out like crazy. And there are definitely currents out in the ocean, but I generally think the biggest ones are not the rip currents, especially around big waves. Yeah, the biggest current I've ever been a part of, actually, it's been a couple, but yeah, one time I was in the Virgin Islands and they had a Puerto Rican current. It was like a full moon. It was like, one, twice a year phenomenon. And I remember going out in my kayak and it was like a rocket ship going to the western part of the island. I'm like, this is scary. Just it's literally like a rocket. You didn't have to paddle at all. Um, yeah, and they have that kind of stuff in Hawaii all the time. So you really have to be careful, around Hawaii because you could just get taken out. But this Puerto Rican current, is essentially a unique phenomenon around, the Virgin Islands, and in Hawaii you have a daily phenomenon. But at the same time, it's these currents that are more or less dangerous. The rip currents that I've seen, I'm not too impressed with. But yeah, if you're in a kayak or a surfboard, you can get pulled out by currents. The rip currents are not the ones I would be most concerned about. They are a concern, but generally it's, you know, you swim sideways, you get out of it, and then you paddle your way back in to shore, just stay away from the rip current, so the forces are going into shore, not out away from shore. How people drown. Okay, the deal is this is really funny stuff. Okay, I mean it's not funny, it's horrible, but it's interesting in that it's not what you think. Let me explain something. I saw this experiment a long time ago where they took a mouse, put the mouse in a cup of water to see how long the mouse could tread water. Because the mouse, in a cup, it was a glass actually. You couldn't really swim in a little glass. All you could do is tread water because there's not enough space to go horizontal because it's really hard to tread water. And after about 15 minutes, the mouse sank to the bottom, was ready to die. So they pulled the mouse out, dried him off, cleaned him up or whatever, and they did it again. Wanted to see, how long could the mouse last? And, my general assumption, well, if the mouse blew up after 15 minutes, the mouse is probably not going to be able to last that long. Probably 10 minutes or, if he really blew up bad, probably 5 minutes or so. The answer was mind-boggling. Okay, the answer actually made sense after I heard it was 60 hours. It's like, how 60 hours? Well, the problem was not the treading of the water. The mouse could do that just fine. The problem is the fear that, it was debilitating for the mouse. He was scared he was going to die. Once he got pulled out and he knew he wasn't going to die, he just went for it. He paced himself. He did the best he could do. But when people are scared, you get all kinds of weird things go through your mind. I've been through this many times, honestly. I mean, in the water. You just stay focused, do what you need to do to get out of the situation. But make no mistake, it's fear that is the biggest problem. I mean, without fear, you can go from 15 minutes of treading water like the mouse to 60 hours. It's the fear that's debilitating. Okay. The fear of death, the fear of this. Oh my God, I wish I would have said goodbye to my kids, stuff like that. You think about that stuff, it takes away from what you can do, right? Oh, I wish I would have done this before, no. You just stay there, you focus, and you give it everything you have. At the end of the day, once you have the fear is, essentially encompassing you, you start to hyperventilate. And that's a problem, right? When you start breathing really heavy, I've done this before in the water, get exhausted, get a little nervous. I'm like, oh my God, you can't start hyperventilating. You're not, unless you find a way to relax, closing your eyes, laying on your back, putting your head down in the water. The reason I say put your head down in the water, because even if you're laying your back, if your head's up out of the water, you're just not going to be relaxed. I've been through this. When you lay down completely, put your head down, close your eyes. The eyes are key. You can begin to breathe normally, and then you're back in business, right? But once you start this hyperventilating thing, it's a very serious issue. And if you're in and you can't lay on your back, it's just too wild and crazy, I would encourage you to consider focusing on the out breath. Something I learned a long time ago is if you're competing at a high level and you can't breathe in enough oxygen, you don't try to breathe in anymore. You try to focus on the exhale. And you instantly get like it's like an extra breaths. You can just go harder, longer, stronger. And I taught that to my kids, and it works. So, instead of trying to breathe in, you focus on the exhale. You just really exhale all the carbon dioxide, and all of a sudden, you get plenty of air. It just makes it a little bit easier. It takes the edge off, So it's very important. So the focus has to be on exhaling, not inhaling. If you're focused on inhaling, it's a problem. It really is. Yeah, that's tough. So, yeah. So if you are in a bad situation, do the following steps. So close your eyes. That's key. Gotta relax, right? Relax your muscles. How do you do that if your body's being pulled apart? I think I said the fetal position is a nice position to be in the water, in that the waves in the ocean cannot rip your body apart if you're in the fetal position as one unit, right? So you can save and relax and hold your breath longer. Twisting your arms and your legs. You can cross your legs a little bit while you're in fetal. you know, to make sure your legs cannot be ripped apart and your arms cannot be ripped apart, to make sure you're going to be one, right? So you want to, crisscrossing is a good dynamic, right? Get on your back. Always get on your back because it's you can breathe more air and it's more relaxing. And sometimes you can't, but when you put your head down, you're relaxed. Why are you relaxed? Let me answer that. The water is actually relaxing. It just is. It's a healing. If you put yourself in a way that you're just not exerting any force, the water will calm you down. It just will. That's what it does. It's all this other stuff that gets in the way. So putting your head relaxed in the water, allowing yourself to float, boom, you're good. Yeah, actually, very recently, I got myself in trouble. I was at Avon Beach, which I used to swim. I lived in Avon for a year, a long time ago, not now. And I don't know what happened there, but they have 3 solid sandbars, right? Number one, which is a new phenomenon. In addition to the 3 solid sandbars, there's a lot of space between the sandbars. Usually, sandbars are not so far apart. Get a sandbar, you get another sandbar. These have some solid distance. And because of the sandbars, there's something very strange in the current going on over there. And it's very strange that they have no lifeguards. But I remember my first time in Avon this year, swimming in Avon, I kind of like went for it, after the second sandbar to the first sandbar, because I could walk on the second sandbar. And so I was like, oh, it's no big deal. And I was like, I'll just go for it. And then I went real hard and I tried to stand. Eventually I couldn't. It was like really deep. I'm like, whoa. And I got really tired actually getting to the first sandbar. And I'm like, that was strange. That was really, really strange. It's no big deal. Strange things happen. But then, I kept going, got out, and I always try to go in and out just to make sure I don't get too fatigued and too exhausted. So I get out and I go back in, reevaluate the position, the situation at hand, and then I try to go in. And so I did that again. And, after the second sandbar, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go for it again. And I went for it. And it was so far, and the currents were so complicated. I was already tired from the first swim. I eventually I figured, I was like, dude, this is not good. And I tried to stand up and I couldn't stand up and I'm exhausted. I started hyperventilating because I was nervous. I'm like, oh boy. And so I did exactly what I shared with you, laid on my back, put my head in the water. And that was the key step at that time. And, caught my breath and I got out of there and I was like, okay, I think I'm done with this stuff. But the weird thing is they have no lifeguards at Avon Beach. And at this point, I consider Avon Beach to, possibly the most dangerous beach because there's something in the currents. And it was not a big day, but I was, with all the forces, and I can swim very well, I really couldn't make it through the water. I still, to this day, I don't understand. And to be honest, I went back there and I did the same thing and I got myself into the same problems. I'm like, oh my God, if people go out, that aren't as skilled, it's going to be a very serious issue. So I don't know why they don't have any lifeguards there, because I mean it's obviously extremely, extremely necessary. There's something going on. They also have an incline. The sand, the ocean, the winds, the current has formed kind of an incline. So when the waves crash in harder than normal, and then when they recede, the undertow is much stronger than normal beaches because they have gravity pulling them in. And then you have these 3 sandbars, which are very solid distance apart and very deep in between. I'm like, whoa. So you have a little bit of extra intensity at the shoreline, and you have this strange dynamic, offshore. And it just, I think it's quite dangerous. So I don't really understand what's going on. Yeah, once your breathing stabilizes, you get out of the ocean. I mean, just do your thing, get out, and one thing that I don't know how to do well is call for help. Honestly, I think if you try to call for help, you might not be successful, but that's something that I will consider in the future, and I'll try to reference, and I will talk to lifeguards. I'll try to add that in. Because if somebody's flailing and this kind of stuff, I don't think anyone's just going to go for them. But something to keep in mind, how do you actually get help? So definitely a big question for me. All right. I assume when I go out, I'm never getting help with what I do. So, but it should be something I know how to do to share with others. Okay, let's continue. Yeah. So here's the deal. Before you're gonna go in, see, I have two different techniques that I've been encompassed throughout my life. My old like rah rah, tough guy technique from 15 years ago, and my new super cool, super chill, super relaxed, be one with the water technique that I currently have, right? And I'll talk about both. So first of all, in both techniques, I just look. As soon as I get to the beach, I evaluate. I just look what's going on. When you have waves from two directions coming, you're probably gonna get beat up on your way out. Especially if you're body surfing, it just happens. Your body gets twisted, sometimes pretty bad. But it is what it is. But I try to evaluate, the dynamic of waves coming from two directions. And if you're an amateur, that might not be a good time to play, because you're going to get hit from the side and it's easy to get disoriented in such a dynamic. When the waves are extra big, you got to evaluate the time necessary for them to actually, come, like, to crash, number one. And for the second wave, I always time between, I used to always time like the time between the waves, because that was the opportunity I had to get in at an intense level. So I used to, if I had 2 seconds when a big wave hits, I would just tear off running. How do you run? Well, you have to lift your feet really high, because you can't run in the water like you run on land. Your feet have to go above the water line, essentially, if you're going to make some distance. So you have to, lift your knees high, 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 and that's how you have to run in and run out, to be honest. But out, if you get pushed by the waves, it's not such a big deal if your feet are above the water getting out. But getting in, it's important. Also, it saves energy, because if you don't lift your knees high and you don't go above the water with your steps, you expend energy. And you're gonna get fatigued. You need all your energy, you know what I mean? So usually, I used to count the time between the waves and just, lift my knees up and just tear it up and run in real fast. Super aggressive, super hyper, super tough. I don't do that at all anymore. I can do it. I'm just as fast as I was then. I'm just as confident. But what I do now is just slow mo. It's so cool. My entire interpretation of swimming in the waves is that I am part of the water. I am part of the waves. And, I use the shape of my body, like I don't mind getting hit by even big waves at this point, because I know how to go through them. You turn your body sideways, and I use my elbow to break the water. Like if I accept a hit, I don't have to accept these hits. This is a conscious thing. But I lean into the waves in many cases if they're really, really big, because they're going to push me back otherwise unless I give some force. And I put my elbow in to break the wave, and then my body follows the elbow. And then just go like, with the elbow up. Your body is water. The water will surround the water. That's it. And your elbow is a nice little point. It'll create the break necessary in the wave to flow around your body. It's really easy. You don't have to run and jump and just throw the elbow in and just. So I use my hand also, like karate chop. Generally from below, because you want to break the karate chop. Usually it's from above, but I try to break the waves from below if they're going to try to hit me. No big deal. Don't forget, you're made out of water, and the water goes around the water. It avoids the water. It doesn't go through water, right? Water avoids water. It's key. And when it's comfortable and a big wave is coming to crash right on top of me, I go under it, and I do it in the smoothest, coolest way. And this is one point some people might consider getting. They have these surfer shirts to make sure that surfers don't chafe their body when they're on the surfboard. I don't wear any of that stuff. But the fact is, sometimes I have to go in where, because of sandbars, you go in, it's fine, it gets deep and then gets shallow again with sandbars. It's like normal routine. And sometimes big waves hit around the sandbars, they do. And, if you're going to go under them, you could kind of rub your chest against the sand, which, I mean, honestly happens to me, some frequency. And so you might wear like one of those surfer shirts. They have a name for them, but I'm very primitive. I go in as I was made, swimming trunks, goggles, and that's all, folks. Right? I don't take anything else with me. But if you're worried about scratching due to sand when you go under like big waves and stuff, it's like these polyester or synthetic shirts, should minimize the risk, right? Yeah, so these waves do come in bunches, so like when one wave hits, I mean, you can be sure there's another one following. Part of the reason is when it hits, you can get a solid undertow, and that undertow is going to curl under the next wave, making it more intense. But these things come in bunches. So, also if you're body surfing and you miss a really good wave, you don't get upset. You just chill because the next one coming right away. You don't have to worry about it. It's right there for the taking. So you young kids like, oh my God, I should have gotten that wave. And I'm like, yeah, well, just sit tight. Yeah, so when you miss a wave, it's no big deal. Be sure the next one will be follow right up, so make sure you're ready for the next one. But they definitely come in bunches, and generally there's a frequency pattern for the time between the waves. The thing that could mess that up is when you have, you know, currents come from two directions, when you have waves coming from two directions, and it's really the time differential is really hard to calculate there because you have two different times and then they smack into each other, and it's, so it can get all complicated there. But usually, that's a small percentage. Usually, the waves do come, here they come from the west, and I'm extremely careful when I see they're come from two directions. I know that that's not that's not a good thing. You know what I mean? Things happen, weird things happen. Your body gets twisted almost 100% of the time coming in. Like it's, really, and when it's big, it gets twisted really bad. And you get hit from the side constantly. It's just not as enjoyable in swimming. And, when you have these two directional stuff. I mean, honestly, over the years, I've noticed that I cut my swims pretty short when you have solid strong waves coming from two different directions. It's not fun. The play is not as good. And usually I don't stay at shore and jump in waves. I either swim or I go. I'm not really, I don't understand people who just, most people are scared to go in. They just stay at the very last breaking point and they just play in the waves. And I mean, it's just super high percentage. I mean, it's like 95% of the people that go in the water are just standing right at one place. And it's so sad because if you want to have fun, the only thing that's keeping these people away is fear. So you put the fear somewhere else, you get to play a little bit stronger, a little bit harder. It's kind of fun. Yeah. So we'll see. And that's, I remember an interesting quote: on the other side of fear is pure bliss. And I think it's true. I remember the one day it was last year. I mean, there were some massive waves. It was just huge. It was in the summer. So usually in the summer, the waves are smaller, but it was just massive waves. And I was in Hatteras Village, which I usually don't go to Hatteras Village. Just so happened. And I mean, I must have been just riding those waves for at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, because it's just so big and so awesome. I mean, one of my best ever, play days, body surfing, swimming, whatever. And I try to get, my son, and I encouraged other people to go, but, my son would not get past, the first level of solid breakers. And I was there to save him. I said, I'm going to keep you safe. I mean, I will sacrifice my life for anybody. I'm not going to be scared to try to help people. You know, I mean, I'm not going to walk away from a situation, especially with, my boy. I mean, that's he knows that I had his back, but he was still scared. And he saw what I was doing. He was like, man, that's so cool. But it was a fear that held him back. And it's unfortunate. We'll see. Hopefully, this year he'll be better. Hopefully next year he'll be better. Hopefully eventually he gets over that fear. But eventually it's like the greatest game. It's the game God gives you to play. I mean it's just great. It's so much fun. And the only thing that holds you back from playing these awesome games or this awesome game is actually fear. So, mind you, I don't think that day was very dangerous as far, but it was intimidating. And the reason I say it wasn't dangerous is mainly because it was in the summer. The big days, it wasn't a storm, it wasn't like a hurricane or anything. The big days here, come in hurricanes, tropical storms, and definitely other than those, it's not in the summer, it's in the fall slash winter. That's when you get the big stuff, the biggest stuff. So if it's not a named storm in the summer, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that bad. So, yeah, okay. So you got to check out the waves, evaluate everything about the waves before you get in. Yeah, you got to stand on one foot. When you walk in the water, stand in the water. If the waves are coming, if you put 2 feet in the ocean, the turbulence by the water hitting one foot will get in the other, and vice versa. And it's kind of like quicksand. It's really like a mess. So to mitigate the risk of turbulence, you stand with one foot, and your feet are pointed towards like the front. Have your it's perfect. Your calves and your bones, they cut right through the water. If you stand sideways, it's actually going to create more resistance because it's more horizontal. So you want to, if the waves are coming, at you, you put your foot facing the waves that are coming, and the water will go right around one foot. The minute you put that second foot in the water, the turbulence, and it gets all messy, nasty, strange, complicated, and everything else. And that's what the birds do. If you look at the birds when the waves come in, they're always on one foot. They hop around on one foot. Waves go out, they're on 2 feet. They know what to do. So when you're in the water, you go on one foot, lift the other one way above the water, put it in. You can put it down in when the waves recede or whatever. Lift up the other foot, and so high knees, stepping over the waves. Make sure you don't get tired. I mean, what do you need this turbulence, the fight turbulence that you're creating for? It doesn't make any sense. Just avoid the turbulence, right? So you step high over the waves, one foot at a time, one foot through the waves at a time. Okay, when you see the break point, so what I used to do is I used to just like run fast, when I lived here before. I had the time interval. I knew when I was in, quote unquote, in, and I used to run and get in, and not anymore. I mean, I actually pride myself in how slow and how cool and methodical I can get in to anything, right? Because as I mentioned before, I am water. And if I put myself in the right place, the water will go around me. It's not gonna beat me up, right? It's gonna hit my body and dissipate. It's kind of cool. Uh, so yeah, I mean, and so I'm still learning about that. That's my new thing for this year. So yeah, I mean, I'll learn a lot more. But yeah, before I was much more intense and heavy duty and used to just run and but it's key to get under the breaking point. Once you're in the water itself will protect you because water finds its way around water, and also you're going to be part of the second layer of water. So it's important, so you're going to protect yourself, and the water above you is a barrier as well. Yeah, swim past the break point, and honestly, we have sandbars, you have more than one break point, but there's going to be a big one. So they always be a biggest break point. The one closest to shore is the one that people are going to get kind of rocked. That's where people hang out, and the one furthest out is going to be where the bigger waves are. To be completely honest with you, once you pass the break point, you understand where you are, what you need to do. You can lay on your back. You can evaluate the situation to make sure you can get out safely. Body surfing is, I think, an essential component, but I will not make it part of this lesson because this is just about the swimming and stuff. And the body surfing is so much fun and it's play and it doesn't fit in my mind. It has to be separate, right? So, okay, swimming in the big waves. Yeah, sometimes you can, swim around, sometimes you can't. Um, if it's just too much, you just got to get out, right? You should already have a game plan, understanding what the dynamics are before you get in and how you're going to get out, in that maybe you're going to be taken out, on a current. Maybe you're going to swim your way out, maybe you're going to ride a wave, but you should know. You should have a plan before you get in. And if you can't really deal with it, if it's too powerful, you got to try to get out sooner rather than later, because essentially if you're going to wait until you tire, you're going to have less fight, right? All the risks come in, you know several magnitude, like there's going to be much worse than it's going to be as it is if you try to get out right away. Once you understand you're in trouble. Yeah, sometimes I like to play the game of getting in and getting out. It's really fun, because jumping in to big waves is awesome, and getting out of them is just the greatest thing ever. And playing that game is a blast. So especially sometimes swimming's not the thing. You can always just play in and out. Yeah, standing, where at the break point, I probably wouldn't do that. that's a that's not as fun. But whatever you like to do, just stay safe, right? Getting out of the water. Okay. Okay, you have to go beyond the break point, right? So, like when I say beyond the break point, there's 2 points that are beyond the break point. One is further in the ocean, the one is further, to the shore, right? You want to go further into the ocean, because if you're in front of the break point, you're gonna get rocked, okay, by the waves, right? And you have to jump a wave by, if you just sit there and wait, the wave is going to lift you up and put you back down. I mean, you got to move. You got to move with the wave. So before the wave comes to the break point, you got to jump that thing. You got to you got to swim, and fast too. So you're going to stay on the wave. And that's the beginning of this body surfing thing. But this is just jumping a wave to get out of the water. And later, not in this sequence of videos, but in others, I'll talk about, where to put your hands, where to put your feet to make it more enjoyable, get a better ride out of it. Because it's a blast. I mean, you're not going to do any better, but, getting out is awesome. I mean, getting in is challenging, getting out is just fun usually. Yeah, understand you may not be able to pick the time and place of departure from the ocean. No big deal. When you understand you have no control, it's good. Just relax. Things are good. You're gonna be okay. Yeah, the ocean will eventually throw you out, as I mentioned. The first hurricane is where I learned that. So just relax. Lay on your back, paddle around, just chill, see what happens. Okay. Yeah. My first hurricane, which I talked about, was like an amusement park ride, and it literally was. I mean, I went on it so many times. After it dumped me out, I got back on half a mile up the beach, got thrown out, run back, and then it was a blast. That was like cool. Uh, I talked about the couple in Frisco where I had my dogs run. They were, waiting for me to die. They literally, I just knew, and that was an extremely enjoyable day, not because they were waiting for me to die, but it was big. It was really big. The nor'easter that almost took me out is, you know, I learned to close my eyes, fetal position, crossing your arms and your legs as much as possible to become a ball, to be one yourself and to be one with the ocean. Number two. So it's not going to fight with you. You just fly around with it, isn't this? Um, yeah, so swimming between sandbars with strong side toes is kind of tough. I actually just talked about in Avon. I don't know what's going on with the currents, but they have these serious sandbars, which are very far from shore and solid distance between the sandbars, and they're really deep, between them. And I consider it to be extremely dangerous, and I still don't understand what's going on there. And hopefully I'll figure out what's going on with the currents and everything, and hopefully I can share. But I can tell you, I swim really good. And for some reason, I don't make progress on swimming between these sandbars with the, strong sideways toe. It's like I don't move. Very, very, very strange. You know, just strange. Know your environment. Okay. So if you're in Hatteras, you got to know people die here all the time. It's just part of the deal. If you're in the Bahamas, okay, the Bahamas honestly varies, but most people go to Nassau, and Nassau is like really tame. It's just tame. Even during massive hurricanes, like Hurricane Sandy was the biggest hurricane I've ever lived through and swam in, but I was in the Bahamas. It's nothing. The power wasn't there. It doesn't get deep, far off island. No elevation change means there's not as much power in the waves. So I think the Great Bahama Bay is all around Nassau, so it's not gonna get too deep. But keep in mind if you're in Eleuthera or something, Eleuthera has two sides, it's kind of like this island actually. Eleuthera is literally like Hatteras Island. But you have the Great Bahama Bay side, which is just, it's Caribbean, it's calm, it's good, and then you have the Atlantic Ocean side, and it's just violent. And if you want to see a really crazy video, try to take a look at the Glass Island Bridge, like crossings. I saw some people driving across the Glass Island. What was it? Wait, not the glass. It's called the Glass Window Bridge, right? It's in Eleuthera, northern Eleuthera, Glass Window Bridge. And I saw literally the craziest video in my life from a friend of mine posted it. These two guys wanted to get to the northern part of the island. And so they just looked and these waves were going over the bridge, right? So, it's okay if you have waves going over a bridge like a foot, 2 foot, it's bad. It's really bad. You don't want to go over a bridge like that. But these waves were going over the bridge like 50 feet over. I mean, if you had a car on the bridge, it was like, sorry, you're getting dumped out in the on the Bahama Bay side. It was like, and this was not during a storm. This was a sunny day. This is like normal stuff. You know what I mean? This is the ocean in the winter. This is the wintertime stuff. And my God, the guys are like, did you see that? They're like, yeah, yeah. So they drove and then they kind of, before the big waves, and they time the waves like I shared with you. When you get in the ocean, you have to, it's sometimes a good idea to time the waves. So they knew when the waves were coming. They stopped in between. They saw this wave, which is like so much bigger than their car. I mean, it was like literally like 20, 30 cars. No, not 20, 30 cars. Yeah, maybe it was actually. No, not that much. Okay. It was just so much bigger than any car I've ever seen. It was bigger than the Bigfoot, car, those trucks, those Bigfoot trucks. It was, and the guy was like, "Oh my God." They were like in shock, and they were already in, so they're not leaving. You're not going backwards now. They were in, and then they gunned it and they made it the other side, and the guy pooped his pants in the video. And I can't blame him. I can tell you that was like unbelievable. I thought it was the ultimate trick of a government that built a bridge in the most dangerous, they put a road in the most dangerous place you could possibly have it. Waves are going literally like close to 50 feet over the bridge, and just from over the bridge to 50 feet. So everything is getting pushed. Glass Window Bridge, everybody. Take a look at that. If you can find some videos on that, it'll blow your mind. You'd be surprised what happens in some parts of the world. But they actually have these roads. Yeah, the Virgin Islands is generally safe, at least on the southern and the western part of the island. I hear Puerto Rico has waves. I've never been to Puerto Rico, but it's 60 miles away from the Virgin Islands, with St. Thomas specifically. But Hawaii is wild, 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 wild. I've never seen anything like Hawaii. Okay. You really have to be careful. Whirlpools kill people just constantly. It's a normal phenomenon there. The currents are the strongest, some of the strongest currents on Earth. In my entire life, I've kayaked way over 1,000 times. Maybe 2,000. Probably over 2,000 times. I don't really know how many times I've kayaked in my life, but I've kayaked thousands of times in my life. I used to kayak every day for an extended period when I was young, and then I lived at the beach and I would kayak every day for a couple of years with the kids. And then we moved to the Bahamas and we were kayaking pretty consistently out there, and we're back in Hatteras kayaking. I don't know how many times I've kayaked, but it's way over 1,000. Like literally, it's over 1,000 times, right? So, in my entire life outside of Hawaii, I got flipped twice. One was in this Puerto Rican current in the Virgin Islands where it was like a rocket ship going out to the western part of the island. I was scared. I mean, I couldn't believe how fast I was going. It's literally like I had a phenomenal motor and it's like phew, just taken out, and eventually when I turned around, I honestly, I mean, it was too much for me. I got flipped, it was a very precarious situation. It was really weird because there were boaters that saw me stuck on a rock, and I couldn't get back in the kayak. I mean, I was there for at least 2 hours, if not 3 hours, and then eventually, like, I found a solution, thank God I found a solution, and it wasn't for a lack of trying. I tried to get in the ocean, just got beat up even more and more and more and more. And these guys on a boat, saw me, I'm waving to them, and they're like they just look at me, they're like, "Dude, what are we gonna do?" "You're screwed, but it would be worse if I was screwed and they were screwed," right? Because they couldn't do anything. It was just so powerful that day. That was one day I got flipped on a kayak. And the other day I got flipped on a kayak was in the Bahamas, and it was a really solid storm coming in. And the currents and tide was rolling out and the storm was rolling in, and there was a twisting action. I went kayaking twice in Hawaii. I got flipped both times. It's a freakish place. The currents are just so powerful every single day. If you're on the western part of the island, it's extremely treacherous because you can actually end up somewhere on another island. I mean, you can be taken out to shore. It's kind of wild out there. On the eastern part, you can get pushed back to shore. um, but you got to be careful. Hawaii is the rules are different in places like Hawaii. The South Pacific, certain islands, you really don't want to play with. These volcanic islands are the ones where things are just different, right? Because there's more elevation change above and below the surface of the water. You know, So recap big wave swimming. Wear proper attire. Goggles. You have to wear goggles. Without goggles, I just don't understand how you can swim in salt water. You know what I mean? It's really tough. You can get disoriented. Use minimal energy when entering. There's no reason to fight the water when you're entering. Just save your energy. Relax. Just chill. You know, if it's too strong, find a way out. You're always going to have a solution. You know, just try to get your solution a little bit sooner if you know you can get yourself into more trouble, right? Because the earlier the better, right? Yeah, body surfing is something I'm going to talk about in the future. I don't want it to be part of this. So this is going to be the end of the big wave swimming concept book, lesson, whatever. I hope you can, share this with your friends. I hope this gives some people the knowledge and the wherewithal they need so they can save themselves if they get themselves into a bad situation. And honestly, if you're really brave and you want to play, hopefully, that's going to be possible as well. But, I'm from my experience, from living here as long as I have, I've never seen anybody do what I do. And and I do understand it's a problem. I understand it's not necessarily good, but it's what I do. And I will continue to do what I do. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching.